Okay, 9.4 is called the polar form of a linear equation. And this is the polar form. So we're going to learn how to go from polar form to linear and linear back to polar. So there's two parts. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get y alone in this problem. And divide by -5. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to graph it. So I put my first dot at 13.5. And I'm going to go up 12 and over 5. And it looks something like this for this line. From the origin to that line is the distance. This is the distance from the origin to that line, and that distance is equal to P. And the alpha is the angle it makes in the second quadrant. So you need to do plus or minus the square root of a squared plus b squared. We had this in chapter, I think we had this in chapter 6 already, so this is kind of a review. A squared, this is the a, this is the b, so it's 144 plus 25, which makes 169, and it's plus or minus the square root of 169, so it's plus or minus 13. And it's always the opposite of the C value. So if this is a positive 13, it's going to be a negative 13. This number is the P. It's the 13 divided by a negative 13. It's the number divided by the square root of a squared plus b squared, which is equal to a positive 1. It's the distance. So even though it shows a negative, it's the absolute value of this, which P is equal to 1. And then to figure out the angle, you could either use this one or this one, but since this is the x, you can use the cosine inverse of 12 divided by 13. And when you plug that into your calculator, let's see what we get. Cosine inverse of 12. You get 22.6 degrees, but it can't be 22.6 because you are in this quadrant. So 180 minus that, it's 157.4 degrees. So I need to come over here and rewrite it. P is 1 equals R cosine of theta minus the alpha, and the alpha is 157.4 degrees. Okay, I think we're going to do another one. Here's another one. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to graph it. So I got y alone, and I'm going to come over here and graph it. Put my first dot at 1.5. And I'm going to go down 1 and over 2. It looks like that. So I know that I'm in, I got to draw an origin to that line. This is called the P, or the distance from the origin to that diagonal line. And alpha is the angle in the first quadrant. So in order to, you have to go back to the original, copy it down. I have to come over here and do the square root of a squared, which is 1, plus b squared, which is 4, which is equal to the square root of 5. And you're going to divide everything by the square root of 5. And since this is a negative, this is a positive. If this is a positive, then that's a negative. So it's plus or minus. So the P is this number right here. It's 3 divided by the square root of 5. And 3 divided by the square root of 5, I got to put it back into this form. So So in place of my p, I have to take 3 and divide it by the square root of 5, and that's going to end up being 1.3. It's right here. And then it's r cosine of theta minus alpha. And it's cosine inverse of 1 divided by the square root of 5 on your calculator. And it's going to end up being 63.4 degrees. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction. They put it in this form, and you have to put it back into a linear form. Okay, so you are going to put 3 equals, and you are going to take the r and leave it out front. This is just the cosine of theta minus 150 degrees. So 3 is equal to r. It's going to be the cosine of theta, cosine of 150, minus, if this is a minus and this is a plus, sine of theta, sine of 150, three is equal to, you're going to put the r on both of them, so it's going to be r cosine of theta, cosine of 150, plus r sine of theta, sine of 150. Draw a picture of 150 degrees, which is right here. This is 1, 2, and a negative root 3. You're going to put a 3 equals cosine of 150. So look up here, the cosine is r cosine of theta times a negative root 3 over 2 plus r sine of theta times the sine of 150, which is 1/2. And then my r cosine of theta turns into 3 equals, from right there, r cosine of theta is x, negative root 3 over 2, plus r sine of theta is y, 1/2. And all I'm going to do is multiply everything by 2. So I'm going to get 6 equals a negative root 3x plus y. Final answer. Same thing with this one. R cosine of theta plus 30, it's going to go 1 equals R cosine of theta cosine of 30. If that's a plus and this is a minus, sine of theta sine of 30. 1 is equal to R cosine of theta cosine of 30 minus R sine of theta sine of 30. This equals x, cosine of 30 is the square root of 3 over 2, minus this equals y, 1/2, multiply everything by 2, 2 equals the square root of 3x minus y. Final answer. And those are all the notes for 9.4.